Mr. North and South American, all ships at sea, let's go to
The Bitchspot Report. Welcome to The Bitchspot Report, the conservative atheist podcast that's not afraid to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Every week, your hosts, Cephas and Mike, will take on the latest religious and political news and examine the world around us from a distinctly conservative and skeptical perspective. Join us now for this episode of The Bitchspot Report. Happy 4th of July. You found the Bitchspot Report Podcast, episode 69, and no, there will be no jokes about that, so don't expect any. This week, the Vatican admits nobody pays any attention to them, a Christian radio host is arrested for child molestation, a Mississippi Tea Party leader offs himself, and Christians have no idea what traditional marriage is. Plus, we talk about the unfortunate recent history of the American democracy train and why America isn't what it should be. The next 90-ish minutes ought to be pretty good.
Yeah.
So how are we doing?
Doing pretty good. It's been a weird week. Some of the stories that have been popping up, I mean, I don't know if we're going to talk about, I think we could talk about a couple of things in the main event, but there's been some weird stuff going on.
Oh yeah. Well, there always is.
Yeah. I mean, I think weirder than usual. And, like I said, I'll save some of this for the main event, but I mean, like this Facebook thing is really, really bizarre with a study, and they were manipulating messages. And actually, Stuart Robbins of the Exposing Pseudo-Astronomy is supposed to be doing his next show on this subject. And I kind of talked to him a little bit about it. And really it's not so much the issue with Facebook, but it's the universities, and they may have overstepped their bounds ethically in doing this experiment.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why I don't pay any attention to Facebook whatsoever. But you know.
Yeah, it's kind of scary because I mean, there's been a lot of trouble. I mean, with universities overstepping their bounds experimentally. I mean, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment is like the classic that always seems to pop up in these cases where it was human experimentation that went totally awry. You know, it's been a rallying point for, you know, African Americans and stuff like that. It may be still going on. I doubt too many people were harmed, but these universities are bound to ethical, you know, boundaries on human experimentation, and there was no controls on this. There doesn't seem to be anything. I mean, might find out later that there was, but at this point, there's no evidence that they properly. There's review boards on ethics that would drive these experiments. And, that didn't seem to happen. And, someone should be pulled up in front of a board somewhere and, at least made to answer for what happened. I mean. Yeah,
but nothing will ever happen. Come on, we know that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as Facebook, I mean, I don't think Facebook is as culpable as the universities. I mean, Facebook, you did sign a agreement saying that they could do whatever they want with your data. So Facebook isn't the problem. I mean, and quite frankly, I mean, the best you could do is bitch and moan and, you know, protest and do whatever. Nothing's going to change, and maybe Facebook might lose 0.5% of its subscribers over this. You know, it's like nothing's really going to change there. It's just something that kind of it's disturbing. It just disturbs me that the scientists behind this experiment may have screwed up and not conducted themselves ethically in this case. And that seems to be where the issue really is.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to see where it all.
I'd like to see what
goes on as time goes on.
Because I don't know, because I think it's too early. I mean, it's really too early to really dig into it too deep. That's why I'm just talking about it now, because hopefully at some point the researchers say, oh yeah, we went through all that, and you know everything was okay, and you know this is what it was, and maybe it's okay, and if not, I mean, I don't know what they do in those cases. Do they just censure the researcher for 6 months or something like that, or it goes on a permanent record somewhere? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what happens to these guys when that happens. So probably again, not a lot will happen, but I'd like to follow this one.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see, like I said, what happens. You know, it's a little bit early to really draw any conclusions at the moment.
Right.
So
yeah, but I think it's because I'm kind of tweaked. I've been going through a lot of this Illuminati stuff. I got this audio on this guy, and I'm like, oh my! I've heard some crazy batshit stuff. I mean, we've talked about crazy batshit stuff on this show, This guy believes that Russia had gotten Israel to buy nuclear fuel from Japan to sell to Iran. And on top of it, he believes that when North Korea was firing these missiles, when they were doing their missile tests, Japan went to the United States and asked, if these missiles fall on Japan, will you honor your treaty obligations? And the United States said no. So apparently Japan went to Russia, bought 5 nuclear missiles with no fuel, and the Fukushima Unit 3 was producing the fuel for these rockets. And to test the fuel, they set off 2.25. This is straight from this guy. 2.25 bombs in the Pacific Ocean, which caused a 9.6 earthquake that damaged Fukushima and created the tsunami, though the tsunami never hit Japan. All that video you saw of Japan being flooded by a tsunami didn't exist. That's all figment of our imaginations.
Okay.
And, I'm like, where do these people come from? And how do we block the rocks that they come out from under? I don't know where this guy gets this stuff, you know? And of course he kept always referring to Israel as Rothschild Israel, because apparently when Britain was controlling Palestine, sold Palestine to the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds created Israel.
Sure they did.
Yeah. So, and this is all part of the Illuminati, the New World Order stuff, you know, and it's like, oh my God, I've heard batshit stuff. We're going to talk batshit stuff on this show, but this is like the worst. And, this guy, he's into Tesla technology. He said he's worked at it with the Department of Energy or Defense. I got to double check that. I'll be talking about it on my show in 2 weeks. So, yeah, it's like, dude, take your Prozac, whatever. You're out there. You're making shit up. And yeah, he's like, well, didn't you see the earthquake? The seismometer? There's 2.25 waves. And like, so that could be very much an earthquake, but the waves didn't look like an earthquake. So I'm going through that stuff. There's this lady about chemtrails. Again, it has to do with the chemtrails and HARP to do weather manipulation, and it's all run out of the Vatican. I think I've already mentioned that the Vatican is actually controlled by Satan and, all that stuff. I'm like, I gotta stop listening to this stuff because it's driving me nuts. I mean,
oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you come up with all the more interesting crazies. We just get Pat Robertson.
Well, he's on my list. I've got him listed in my Illuminati. He's talked about it. I think he's one of those who pressed forward the idea that the Catholic Church is run by Satan and Satan controls the church.
And if you will forgive my use of this expression, hurt the bitch.
I think that's kind of standard amongst evangelists anyhow. They really don't like the Catholic Church. And I don't know.
Nobody likes the Catholic Church.
Right. They dislike the Catholic Church like they dislike Jews. And it could have been out of the backlash from the Protestant Reformation. It's that kind of stuff. The Christians don't like the Jews because they're the ones who nailed that Jew to a cross. And I think they do the same thing with the Catholics because they were the dominant church until Martin Luther nailed his stuff to the wall and all this stuff came about. So the Catholics are on their shit list too. They're just as bad as the Jews. And, the Christians calling the Catholics a cult and all that, which is probably a good statement, much of the trappings and the traditions and, all the stuff is cult-like. We eat the body and drink the blood of Christ, which is, I think kind of freaks some people out.
Yeah, well, let's face it, all religions are really just cults. Religions are just cults that got popular.
Right.
Yeah, well, I made a discovery this week. I'm really, really, really bad at taking breaks. Because I announced last week that I took a break. I don't do vacations, okay? I don't just sit down and relax. I never have. I never will. If I take a vacation, it's to go do something or to accomplish something or to go somewhere or whatever. I don't just sit around and relax. So I looked at my blog and I realized, holy crap, I've got like 75 drafts just sitting there unwritten. Some of them go back over 2 years. So I started going through them, figuring I'll just delete all the ones that are either time sensitive or weren't worth writing or whatever. And I immediately started writing a whole shit ton. And so in the matter of like 3 days, I produced another entire month's worth of content. And I'm still going strong. So I'm working faster and harder on break than I ever was when I wasn't on break. Jesus, this just doesn't work, does it?
Abandon all hope, dude.
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. It's like there's so much of this crap just keeps coming up. I can't just shut up. So, I don't know. It's just gonna go on and on and on. I'm written out until September someplace now.
Well,
so I don't know.
At least you can cut it back to maybe 10 or 15 articles a month instead of your 100 or whatever.
I don't know. I'm just gonna do what I do, and, if I stop, I stop. If I don't, I don't. It is what it is.
Right.
I don't know. Well, anyway, do we have anything else we want to touch on before we get on to the news?
Not really. I got some stuff for the main event. So let's do the news so we can get to that.
Okay.
And now the news.
In an announcement that nobody on the planet is surprised at, the Vatican has announced that the vast majority of Catholics entirely reject the Catholic teachings on sex, admitting that most Catholics ignore papal views on sex and contraception as invasive and irrelevant. The Vatican is about to embark on a 2-year review of their teachings beginning in October. Of course, nobody seriously expects them to change anything, and the mass exodus from the Catholic Church from most of the civilized world will continue unabated. And that's no surprise at all.
It took them 50 fucking years to figure this out.
Well, it's taken them 2,000 years to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever paid any attention to them.
I'm just saying the church itself. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm kind of the impression that these guys know what they're talking about. They're definitely, it's a religion, so they're clueless. So, but really, past 50 years, with, the advent of the pill and all that kind of stuff and advances in birth control and, that type of stuff, the church just finally realizing, hey, maybe we might be wrong on something with the evidence staring them right in the face. It doesn't surprise me. I mean,
yeah.
What are they thinking?
Well, they're not. We know that. And this is a point that I've made before, because the Vatican is really stuck between a rock and a hard place. They can't change their views because that would be an admission that they were wrong all along. But they can't keep their views because the parishioners are just going to leave the church. So what do they do? They're stuck and they can't really fix it. Plus the fact I think Francis doesn't want to be the Pope who says being gay is A-okay. But every moment he doesn't do that, they're hemorrhaging members. So are they going to find some way to balance their standards and say, well, we're not going to be anti-gay, but we're not going to be pro-gay either? Or we're not going to be anti-birth control, but we're not going to be pro-birth control either? I mean, what are they really going to do?
I have no idea. They're going to have to do something if they want to try to save what they got. I mean, if they don't, then close the door, shut off the lights, walk away from it. That's the best they can do because, well, I think the evangelicals have, and most of the other churches will adjust. I mean, they may not go full, hey, bring all the gays in, contraception for everybody. It's done in steps. Try to stay with the times. Of course, trying to maintain the, the core values of that particular church and try to stay relevant. I mean, that's what, for these churches to survive, they gotta remain relevant. But, if they can't and they won't, bye-bye. It's nice knowing you.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the church has been in trouble for a long, long time. And most people don't realize just how bad off they really are. I mean, I pulled some of the numbers. The number of adults who consider themselves former Catholics rose from 26.8 million in 2010 to 32 million in 2013. That's a giant leap of people who have walked away from the church. That's 8 million more people in 3 years. The number of baptisms, as we talked about before, has dropped since 1965, when there were 126,000 adults baptisms reported, down to 38,000 in 2013. That's a huge, huge drop. The The percentage of Catholics who attend Mass, it's down to 24%. And the number of active Catholic priests has been in decline for decades. And this is not even factoring in how the world population has grown between 1965 and today. When you figure all this stuff in, they're probably down to 20 to 25% of what they were 30 years ago. And that's a number I just pulled out of my ass. I haven't figured it out, but there's a huge growth in world population, and their church is shrinking all the time.
Yeah, that's probably a very good estimate, because I'm looking at, I've got the numbers here, and religious sisters in 1965, 179,954 down to 49,000. That's more than half. That's 50, would that be, that's a drop of at least 100,000. That's what, 2/3?
Right.
I mean, this is, all these numbers are dropping from 1965 to 2014. Diocesan priests active in the ministry. It used to be in 65, 94%. Now it's down to 2010, 68%. I mean, this should have been a wake-up call. I wonder if it's, it looks like it's more of a steady drop, so they may not have really noticed it, other than the fact that there's fewer and fewer being involved. So, there doesn't seem to be like a cliff where everything falls off. So, yeah, it probably creeped up on them a little bit, but still, the numbers are shrinking, and, it should have been a wake-up call, middle 70s, early 80s. The numbers aren't lying, and these guys just didn't recognize the problem, and,
yeah, well, I just pulled that up, and in 1965, when all this stuff started, the world population was between 3.3 and 3.4 billion. Today, it's 7.3, 7.4. So we've about doubled the world population, and they're dropping by 2/3 the number of nuns they have in their organization. Something is wrong, because I'm sorry, if you double the population of the planet, you gotta hope at least some of those people are going to become Catholic. And they're not.
Yeah. Now, it could be demographics. The West has been in a lower population increase versus Africa and I think Asia, but even then, those are big spots for, Catholics anyhow. South America, but I think they're in kind of, I don't know if birth rates are down there, but, the places where they've been hitting hard and trying to get people to join, those are the boom places that these numbers should have been going up, and it isn't. That church has got a lot of problems they got to figure out, or they won't be a church anymore.
Right, because it just makes logical sense that if they're focusing all of their attention on the areas where they're having large population increases, then they should be getting more members in those areas. Thus, they should be growing as a church overall. But they're just not. They're shrinking across the board. They're closing parishes. They're closing schools. They're doing all this other stuff. And I don't know how they think they're relevant anymore. I don't. And they're still pretending that anybody gives a shit about them.
I wish I knew, to be honest. Maybe they think, hey, maybe if they go out of business, they can turn the Vatican into a big museum and make money that way and show off all these riches and maybe open the archives or something like that. I don't know.
No. They're going to have a fire sale and burn all the records of pedophile priests.
Yeah. Hide the brothels in the what was it? The choir boy.
Yeah.
Tunnels.
Well, the gay sex ring they've got in the Vatican and all that other stuff.
Right.
Well, it's going the right way as far as we're concerned. I'm just shocked that it's just going away so fast.
It's going away so fast, and when you watch these guys, when they talk, it's like, they talk like it's, I guess maybe that's just the business side of it all, that, yeah, we're doing fine, we don't see any problems here. They talk like, we might consider changes here and there type of stuff. That's like, it's the rah-rah speeches that, upper management gives you. Yeah, we're looking at a good quarter next time. We're expecting a 5% increase in sales, and, or we're expecting these projects to, break, next quarter. It never happens.
They haven't had a good quarter since 1965 at least. Come on.
So, they could be just diluted. I guess you almost have to be a fly in the wall in the Vatican, to figure out what's going on, because they apparently, I don't think they know what they're doing. they're hanging on to these old ideas. I mean, at least the evangelists are, I mean, they're old. I mean, they're not old. You know, but it's, at least it's, you know, they can attract people. I mean, who knows? I mean, you'd almost have to be like an insider to figure out what really these guys, and if they're doing it on purpose. I mean, are they purposely tanking this religion? You know, I mean, it sounds like they are actually. You know, they're just totally with no clue to what's going on in the real world. Anything outside the gates of the Vatican, they want nothing to do with it. You know, they sit around in their whatevers and, you know, think life is good, and it isn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that the evangelicals are doing any better, to be really honest. It's just a lot harder to get numbers on them because they're not one big happy corporation. So, you know, you'd have to go from church to church to church and figure out how much decline each of them are in. And, I really don't care that much to do that.
Right. No, I'm just thinking, you know, cause it's being a Catholic, you know, there's a lot of work involved to, you know, all your sacraments you gotta go through, and there's a lot of, I mean, even just sitting in church, you're kneeling, you're standing, you're sitting, you're standing, kneel, stand, kneel, you know, that type of thing. I got to see a Baptist, service, and it wasn't as bad. I mean, you sat there, and to me it sounded awfully the same as being in a Catholic church. They were talking out of the same book. They were doing all this stuff, but there was no work to it. You showed up, you know, you had to put on good clothes, you know, you put on your best clothes, and you went there and you sat, you listened to the guy talk, and everything's done. It's, you know, go with God, and boom, you're out. And,
yeah. 3 Hail Marys and you're out on the street. Yeah.
So, I don't know if that's the real reason, but it's certainly not as bad as, you know, going through the whole Catholic, you know, there's all the prayers. Well, I mean, I'm sure you know, there's a lot of prayers, but you know, you got the rosary you gotta learn. You have to learn, you know, special prayers you do at marriages. And then of course you have to be in church for the Palm Sunday. You get the ashes on the forehead. I mean, at least the Easter and Christmas services, I think those are the biggies for the Catholics.
But you don't even have Catholics doing that.
Very few.
There's a large number of Catholics who never go to Mass for anything. They don't care. They don't really believe this shit. They're just saying I'm Catholic because that's what I've always been, and that's what my family is, and that's the end of it. It's like Richard Dawkins says, it's a social thing. It's not a religious thing.
Yeah. I mean, the movie Dogma, Bethany, she would just show up because she needed a quiet place to do her checkbook.
Yeah.
You know, I love that movie, you know, but it's,
this is completely off topic, but you just reminded me of this. But, Sci-Fi has a new show on called Dominion. It was a spin-off of the 2010 movie Legion. And the premise of this whole thing was God took a hike and the angels got pissed off at man, so now they're trying to kill man, hoping that God's gonna come back. And my first reaction to that was, you guys have got to go look in New Jersey. That's where God is. He's out playing skee-ball in New Jersey.
Yep.
You gotta think of these things.
Exactly. You know, I mean, make sure he's not on a ventilator somewhere, you know.
But God's a woman, and all right, let's not go there.
Alanis Morissette is God.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how they get George Carlin in there as Cardinal Glick. Yeah, Cardinal Glick. Yeah. The Buddy Christ.
The Buddy Christ. I love the Buddy Christ.
Yeah. So, there are those people like tradition. You go in, you sit down, there's I forget the order now, because if everything's in order, you do the profession of faith, they do a Bible reading, then they do a gospel reading, then they'll go into the sacrament, they go into, you do that. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think that's pretty much it. And depending on.
And then the priest does the holy buggering of the altar boys.
Yeah. Well, that's afterwards, you know.
Hey, they could be in the middle. You can't tell what's going on underneath that skirt.
True. But,
Father, why is your skirt moving? Shut up. Pay no attention to what's going on underneath my skirt.
Ignore the boy behind the big curtain.
Behind the curtain, yeah. No, let's not go there.
But it could be that those people are going away. I know my grandmother was really diehard every Sunday. She wasn't the real diehards that would be there they'll be there Saturday or Sunday. I think they do Wednesdays, either Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I think think maybe Saturdays and Sundays. I think those were the days that they would do masses. Anytime the church was open, they'd be in there. Yeah, because I think during the day it would be open for confessions, and they're always in there to do their confessions. You go higher up in the church hierarchy, there's more pomp and circumstance. You know, they come in with the incense. They do all the bells, they might throw some Latin in there, you know, but I noticed, the church I went to, they were trying to bring some of the Baptist, things into the church. A lot of music, a lot of, you know, guitar playing, stuff like that. I don't think it really caught on. And I want to say maybe they took a hit when they built a new church. Because we used to have this old, somewhat traditional, you know, the high ceiling type. Now they made this one that's kind of a more, you know, like modern architecture. I think it was kind of structured like a cross, but it was kind of an angle, and all the curved chairs, you know, everything was curved. None of it really worked, I think. It didn't work on me. I mean, it's just trappings, and, you know, not believing in God. Why should I even go? You know, and I do think a lot of people just pretty much, abandoned.
You know, actually, while you were talking about that, I had a really funky idea. Since you were talking about the church that you used to go to, it would be kind of cool to get a picture of the inside of the church. You know, they're probably online, and just put like the churches that we used to go to and up on the show notes.
There we go. Yeah. Actually, it'd be just the two. There's the one in Ottawa and one in Joliet. I could probably pull something up.
Yeah, I don't know, because I would have to even look. Oh, it's the outside. Yep, there's the inside. So yeah, I could do that. I'll throw them in the show notes.
Cool.
Yep, that is the inside of that church. On Facebook. Okay, whatever. Well, speaking about pedophile priests, let's go talk about some more of these people.
Yes. Christian radio host arrested in Gaylord on child sex charges. This would be Gaylord, Michigan. This is a story from the Detroit Free Press, June 23rd. WCSG Radio announced Saturday that it has fired personality John Balow after the 35-year-old Caledonia resident was arrested Friday on child sex charges. Cornerstone University released this statement Saturday. Effective today, John Balow is no longer affiliated with WCSG Radio. Chris Lemke, general manager of WCSG-FM, will address this matter on air on his morning show. Balow was arrested on charges of first-degree criminal sexual conduct. Balow paid another person who's a defendant in another child exploitation case to arrange for sexual encounters with minor victims. Further details are being withheld until Balow appears in court. Authorities say that the investigation was conducted under HSI's Operation Predator, an international initiative to protect children from sexual predators. And I believe, from the article, federal and state agent says that person is 41-year-old Ronald Lee Moser of Battle Creek, Michigan. He ran a website offering paying customers sex with underage boys. Earlier this month, when police raided Moser's home, they say they found him with a 12-year-old boy and confiscated child pornography. Johnson says pimps with prostitutes who are underage are not uncommon. I mean, I drive through Battle Creek, working in Detroit, driving between Detroit and Chicago. I go through Battle Creek, and I saw what I think was one of these Homeland Security cars along the interstate, you know, and there was state police. I wonder if something was going on where they had, they weren't doing a border check or anything on the interstate, but they had people pulled over. I don't know if they were doing speeders or what, but, I thought it was kind of weird seeing a Homeland Security car in the middle of the highway. I don't know what they were doing, if it was part of this investigation or not. You don't have to be a Catholic to be a pedophile priest, a Christian radio host, I guess counts. Where do you go with this one? I mean, it's same crap, different denomination.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. You know, and I think it's hysterical that they arrested this guy at a Christian music festival. Yeah. That the police didn't just wait until it was quiet and pick him up when nobody's around. I mean, I hope they arrested him on stage. That'd been way cool. You know, these people really need to see that these predators are part of their religion and part of their churches, and they need to be disgraced in front of their followers. That's the only way you're going to get these people to pay attention.
If that, sometimes it's just mistaken identity. It's something or he could, it can't possibly. He's a religious person. He's a pillar of the community. It's like, no, he's a fucking pervert. Not necessarily him, but his the pimp he goes to was caught with a 12-year-old boy in his room with a whole bunch of pornography. I mean, we'll find out all the charges on this and what's going to come out of it, but this guy's caught, and I think it's pretty clear. And at least this guy's lost his job. He's been fired. I haven't yet heard if there's a bailo defense fund for this guy.
What, you think they want to bailo him out?
Granted, he's innocent until proven guilty. I would say it's pretty close to being a done deal. If you don't believe it, I think, you're more denial than this guy. He probably thought he was doing nothing wrong.
Yeah, but I've seen an awful lot of people who are saying that this guy was never a Christian to begin with, because anybody who acts in a manner contrary to their beliefs suddenly is magically no longer a Christian, even if they probably thought he was moments before he was arrested. These people are a bunch of stupid hypocrites.
Well, definitely. And you know what? But if that's the case, then, if he was, he was a Christian, now I guess he isn't, that says an awful lot about your God on top of it. It's like, okay, he was Christian, but he really isn't.
It's a no true Scotsman fallacy. We know that, but it's really, really common.
Yeah. It's the denial. It's all denial. It's all, we treat the clergy. It doesn't matter what denomination, as pillars. They hold themselves to the standard. We accept them as that standard. And it's just that when they fall or they fail at that, it's like we give them a bye. And, I don't, but, the people who follow them gives them a bye, and, life goes on. You really got to hold these people up and saying, this guy's a pedophile. He sleeps with little boys. While you're sitting there, you're yelling at your TV screens every time a state passes religious freedom or right to marry law. You scream at them like, this is abomination. Same-sex marriage is bad. But then you get this guy who's diddling little boys, and you give him a pass. How hypocritical can you be?
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that this kind of thing happens all the goddamn time. It's the holy rollers who always end up in these scandals. This is a short list. Bishop Eddie Long, who settled out of court in 2011 with several young men who claims he sexually abused them as teenagers. Our pal Jimmy Swaggart, who was caught having sex with a prostitute in 1986. He apologized and was caught again 3 years later with another prostitute. He wasn't that sorry. Ted Haggart, who publicly preached against homosexuality, was caught having sex with male prostitutes in 2006. Bob Moorhead, leader of the Overlake Christian Church, was forced to step down in 1996 after accusations from church members that he molested them during baptism and wedding ceremonies in the church. Douglas Goodman, pastor of the Victory Christian Center, one of the largest churches in England, went to prison in 2004 for sexually assaulting several members of his church. And when he was released, they welcomed him back. This is normal. Tony Alamo, who's in prison for 175 years for the rape and illegal transport of underage girls across state lines. What the fuck? And I could go on and on and on and on and on, because there's tons of these. And all of these people, like Tony Alamo, his followers are still out there defending him, going, he's a wonderful guy and he's wrongfully convicted. No, he's not. He's a fucking pedophile.
Yeah, I think we've gone over this a few times. It's denial. It's these followers. They can blot that out. It's like maybe they have had lobotomies that take that part of the brain out. But it's like they're in denial. They think they walk on water. They can go on and on about pillars of the community. They're men of God. They're supposed to follow the Bible. Bible is love. Do unto others as you have done unto yourself. I don't understand it, but it almost sounds like that they could take this stuff, these religious ideas, And that gives them a pass. It gives them a bye. I mean, it's just so, it's almost to a point where you would want to walk up to them and shake them and says, do you even listen to what you're saying? I'll ever do that. Slap them a few times. Don't you get what you're saying? You're condoning this activity. You're condoning these guys in these criminal activities just because your religion says it's okay, because he's the figurehead of that religion. So it must be all right. I would just want to slap him and say, you're full of shit. This is bullshit.
Yeah, but that's exactly what these religions teach. They teach that these leaders are above the law because they're God's chosen spokesman, and therefore they ought to be able to get away with anything. And if they get caught with their hand in the cookie jar or their dick in the altar boy or whatever, it's okay because God favors this fuck. Yeah. And that's not the way it works.
Yeah. I mean, I did make the mistake of watching Jesus Camp. I only was able to get through half of it because I was like watching these children. You know, these are kids, these little kids. They're being destroyed. When we hear about, when we're like in Africa, they would use kids and, train them to be soldiers, and 9, 10, 11-year-olds, handing them a rifle. They will get them hooked on narcotics. They put them on cocaine. I don't know what all the stuff they put them on, and send them out to fight wars. And we find this disgusting. We find this evil. I was watching it, and I'm watching these adults telling their kids that evolution's wrong and all this stuff, and watching this lady preacher walking back and forth like Adolf Hitler. I mean, I saw a lot of the mannerisms like you would see Adolf at the Nuremberg rallies, waving her hand and telling them that God is great and we will fight the evil, we'll fight Satan. And these kids are raising their hands up. They were raising both hands. I mean, you can almost imagine them going to the Nazi salute. And these are kids, and these kids have been brainwashed into this world that is fantasy. Their parents are encouraging it. The pastors are encouraging it. I mean, I'm watching this lady in this office, and you'll see all these stacked CDs and DVDs and neatly packaged toys, religious toys and stuff like that. It looked to me like this is something that she sold, like you could buy this stuff. So she's making a fortune off of turning these kids into religious zombies. So if she did something wrong and started diddling little girls, or one of the pastor within her ministry is doing something wrong, these kids will think, oh, that can't be true. It is like an army, and they'll follow their leader right off a cliff if necessary, if it meant saving a soul. It's like, oh my God, we're fucked.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what religion does. Every Sunday in every church in the country, they're training these kids not to ask questions.
Yeah, they can't ask questions. And, when I saw that parent going, doesn't it sound ridiculous? Monkey becoming a human? Doesn't that sound, that doesn't sound right. And the kid's going, yeah, that's right. It's like, oh my God, I mean, all these kids were homeschooled. So it's like, they're fucked there. And maybe it's just that. These are zombies. These are religious zombies who will follow anything. And if they're told that their pastor, he's a good guy, he may have strayed, but he's a good guy, they'll keep going. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. It just floors me. And actually seeing that kind of playing out in that documentary, it's like, these are kids who have been like this since they're 5, 6, 7 years old. No wonder it's so fucked up.
Well, yeah, you get a kid when they're young and you'll keep them forever. Yeah. You gotta brainwash them when their cognitive abilities are still stunted.
Right. Malleable.
Yes.
Yeah, cause it's pretty sad, and they're gonna spend their lives believing in bullshit, and it's like their ability to reason has been taken away. Or it's been stunted. Even though they're being taught that creation is the true story, it's almost like any type of reasoning has been stunted to a point where if you even did try to reason it, you're going to circle back to that original, well, creation has to be correct. It's like, not like, well, evolution makes a lot of sense, but it's like their reasoning's been flipped around enough to where they'll end up back at creationism. But it's almost like these kids have been programmed that the religious whatever's in the Bible is correct. From the way I look at things, I mean, get me a book on it. Give me a book on evolution. Give me a book on geology. What's going on here? Whereas all they have is the Bible.
Yeah, they have a book on everything. They don't care about any other books.
Yes.
Which just means they need a much larger library.
Yeah. Or an improved vocabulary.
Yeah, or improved cognitive function. Yeah. Well, anyway, we should probably move on. A Mississippi Tea Party official who was caught in a scandal has apparently committed suicide following a conspiracy to take embarrassing photographs of the wife of a Republican candidate at a local nursing home. Mark Mayfield shot and killed himself with a single bullet to the head. His political colleague, Chris McDaniel, for whom Mayfield apparently arranged the photo session, calls Mayfield a fine Christian man. Sure, because fine Christians are known for running smear campaigns against political rivals and then blowing their own heads off when they fail. I didn't want to do this anything big. I brought it up because, holy shit, these people run around and they say we're all good, high-quality Christians, but whatever happened to the fucking moral high ground that these people pretend to have? Or does that all just kind of go away when political power is at risk?
Yeah. It goes away. The story, it's sad on so many different levels. This guy tried to smear his opponent.
Well, it wasn't even his opponent. He was smearing somebody else's opponent. Yeah. So he killed himself over a race he wasn't even in.
Yeah.
Which is just really stupid.
Yeah. There's just so much wrong. For the show, I've been trying to figure this guy out. I'm no fan of the Tea Party. They seem to be like the worst people. I've got friends who are, they think the Tea Party's great, but I think they're into the original Tea Party, not this Tea Party that's we see now. I don't even know what to comment on, to be honest. This is politics, the way it works in the United States nowadays. I'd like to talk more about this, in our main event. Being caught in a scandal like this was enough to say, hey, he's become the lowest of the low. He may even have, believe that, hey, maybe at the time it sounded like a good idea, but when he starts thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm probably about the most despicable person on the planet for what I just tried to do here. And realizing, really it is. Breaking into a nursing home to take a photo of of a rival's wife who's sick. What purpose? He probably realized how stupid the whole thing was on all the different levels, and then he might get in trouble over it. I don't know if there was.
He had already ruined his political career. Once he got caught, he was already going to go to prison. He was forced to step down from his own office. He was already dead in the water.
Yeah.
And I went looking for Mayfield's political platform, but I couldn't find it because I figured they probably took it down after he died. But I did end up on the Mississippi Tea Party site where Mayfield belonged to it, and they talked about his death and all the rest of that stuff. And one of their quote-unquote trusted news sources is World Nut Daily. And I think that says a lot about them.
God, yeah. What's wrong with these people?
Yeah, well, also, last time I checked, most Christians thought suicide was a mortal sin. So either Mayfield didn't take that seriously, or he was just playing Christian. Which one was it, Oh.
Yeah, there was so much stupid going on here that what can you comment on? I think the story pretty much speaks for itself. Idiot gets caught with candy and cookie jar, kills himself. I don't know. I don't understand. I think what gets me the most is that why did they think any of this was a good idea?
Stupid people do stupid things. They don't think about it.
I know, but it had to make sense at some point. There's something had to have made sense for them to say, well, let's do this.
Well, come on, seriously. Larry Craig sucked a dick in a men's bathroom. That had to have made sense at some point in time, but sure the hell didn't make sense later.
Right. Like I said, for someone to go through all that, our governor here in Illinois, when he got into trouble, he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. There was nothing wrong with selling when Obama got made president, the Senate seat was open. He thought nothing of selling it for $50,000, $100,000. He wanted to get Jesse Jackson Jr. to send him $50,000 to get that seat because it was up to him to appoint that person. He thought nothing of it. But they have him on tape saying that this is a golden opportunity. He could make some money off this deal. It's like, at that time, that was a great idea. Blagojevich could make $50,000 or $100,000 for selling the Senate seat. And what it got him? It got him a prison cell. You're right. These people don't think, but at some point, it made sense at some point. I don't see where, like in this story, in any other political story, I don't really see when did this all make sense? But I think somewhere in there, it made sense at the time, and I would like to know why it did make sense. Why did it make sense for Ted Cruz to suck a dick? It was probably a good idea at the time,
Well, it wasn't Ted Cruz. It was Larry Craig, but that was somebody else.
Okay, Larry.
Ted Cruz, that would be kind of funny too,
Yeah.
but you never know. Maybe he's in the bathroom fucking people too.
You never know. Jim Baker, fucking the secretary. Why was that a good idea? When was that a good idea? When he was married, he ran a mega church. He's trying to build a amusement park. Why was that a good idea at the time? And then all of a sudden when he got caught, and then he's all repentant and please forgive me, Jimmy Swaggart. At what point was it a good idea to sleep with a prostitute?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't think any of these people really think about it, and they don't think they're going to get caught. And when it becomes obvious that they are going to get caught, they're like all shocked and surprised. Yeah. It's like, dude, you should have thought about this shit earlier. Actions have consequences. Figure it out.
Yeah, that's probably it. And it's standard operating procedure. You never admit to doing anything wrong. I didn't know there was anything wrong sleeping with that prostitute. I didn't know there was anything wrong sleeping with the secretary. I didn't know there was anything wrong sucking that dick.
Yeah. Yeah, the Catholic Church didn't know there was anything wrong fucking little boys. They don't know. How are they supposed to know?
Yeah. I mean, they've even said it. Was it Minnesota?
Yep.
The guy in Minnesota.
Exactly.
They didn't know anything was wrong. It's like, they have to say that, or, I mean, they're already on the hook, but, they have to stick to their story that, we didn't know. How your insurance company tells you not to admit guilt. Why is that? Until a court proves that you're guilty, you can get off. You may get off light with, maybe not having to pay extra hospital bills, or if the person you hit comes back and sues you for anything else. When was it a good idea to break into a nursing home to videotape a woman in bed?
Yeah, well, crazy people do crazy things, and I think that pretty much explains this. So we should probably go on to our last story.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is from HuffPo on July 2nd. Is it July 2nd? Is it really July 2nd? Well, let's go with July 2nd. Federal judge to Wisconsin. You know that traditional marriage was polygamy, right? The federal judge who has struck down Wisconsin's gay marriage ban thinks that state officials have a thing or two to learn about the history of marriage as a social institution. In defending their same-sex marriage ban, state officials claim that virtually all cultures through time have recognized marriage as the union of an opposite-sex couple. But as U.S. District Judge Barbara Crabb wrote in her 88-page ruling on Friday, that is simply not true. As an initial matter, defendants have overstated their argument. Throughout history, the most traditional form of marriage has not been between one man and one woman, but between one man and multiple women, which presumably is not a tradition that the defendants and Amnesty would like to continue, Crabb wrote in her opinion. Good for her.
Yeah.
There's always been this argument about traditional marriage, and I think what those who have been fighting gay marriage, they think traditional marriage is, Leave It to Beaver, the 50s. Mom stay at home, cook dinner, dad goes off to work, comes home, there's the martini sitting on the smoking stand, dad smokes a pipe and relaxes for the evening while mom, keeps the house clean, and then every 9 months spit out a kid. And times are changing, folks, and they believe that's what marriage is, the old 50s style, 50s TV sitcom marriages. The world is changing. Homosexuals want to marry. I don't understand what the problem is, why they have to fight this. Wisconsin's in trouble, and the Republicans are in trouble up there. And having a judge call them out on being stupid. They clearly don't understand the history of marriage.
Oh yeah, they don't care though. That's the problem. Right. Most people just don't have a clue about what traditional marriage is. If you look in history, traditional marriage has been arranged, with the woman treated as property. Usually it's polygamous and for the purpose of securing property rights and inheritance for the children.
Right.
Granted, I'm sure that a lot of these Bible-thumping assholes would love to have that back, but,
having their daughter, getting 50 silver shekels for a daughter. I mean, that's probably pretty good money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this whole thing, I'm going to go into a way off tangent here because I think this is kind of important. This also kind of ties into the main event, which we'll get to in a minute, but I've been doing a lot of work lately on cognitive biases, looking at why people are irrational. Most people are, and the only way to avoid being irrational is to be aware of the wiring in your head that makes you do illogical things and think in illogical ways. We're hardwired in our head to do things like this that can really only be explained by evolution. I mean, sorry creationists, you lose again. There's thought patterns in our head that may have been useful at an earlier point in our evolutionary development, but today they're just completely useless. And luckily we have the ability to override these patterns, but it only works if we recognize that there are problems and consciously make an effort to change how we think about things. So in this particular case, there's clearly a bias that makes people assume that everyone has always been just like they are today. They're positive that everybody everywhere throughout history has always been like they are, that think the way that they do today, that act the way that they do today, that believe all the things that they do today. They think, like you said, that marriage was the same as the 1950s Ozzie and Harriet monogamous heterosexual TV marriage, and that's how it's always been. And they don't understand that the idea of two people who fall in love and decide to be together is a relatively new idea. It's probably only been around in widespread usage for maybe 100 to 150 years or so. The norm before that was arranged marriages where the woman was essentially sold off by her parents to be a lifelong sexual slave to the man, having no rights, no money of her own, and no way of improving her lot in life. That's what marriage has been for thousands of years around the world. And yet, that's just not what they think of when they think of marriage. And I don't understand how they can be so fucking blinkered, idiotically ignorant about the whole thing.
I mean, it's tradition.
Yeah, but don't they read their own fucking Bible? The Old Testament is full of people with polygamous marriages and concubines.
Right. But it's, it's this tradition in that, the church is, it's always a man and a woman getting married. That seems to be the norm. I mean, that seems to be a norm. That seems to be the world that they grew up in. Apparently they don't read their Bible. And I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, I think we've talked about religious types saying how to argue with an atheist. Read up your Bible. The atheists know that Bible better than you do. It's like, okay. I mean, that may be what's going on. They don't question. I don't think it even registers, where you could sell your children. Yeah, you could sell your daughter for 50 silver shekels. If the man rapes her, he has to pay the father. She has to marry him and all this kind of stuff. Well, it's in the Bible. It's true, but it's almost like they don't have to worry about it. They won't think beyond, okay, that's what you do. I mean, they don't practice it, but it's like, that's what, my Bible says that. It's fine. One, I think they just want to focus on the rules that they want to enforce. When they go into the Leviticus and laying down with men as a woman, rules and stuff like that. It's pretty funny when you see the guy who's saying that, who has tattoos. It's like, you want to follow this rule, but a few rules away from that rule is about shouldn't be tattooing yourself. It's like, you only want to follow the rules you want to follow.
These people don't care what's actually in the Bible. They care what they want to be in the Bible. They care what they interpret to be in the Bible. What's actually in there is totally irrelevant. They do what they want.
And it always seems like they fall back on the Bible when they need to support their argument. But then when if it contradicts their argument, they'll even deny that it's even in the Bible. Of course, it'd be people like us who would say, well, but what about John 3:16? It's like, it's right there. I just contradicted what you just said. And they'll even argue, oh, that doesn't apply. When you're dealing with the religious type, nothing makes sense. Really, very little they say really makes sense. It makes sense in their own heads, but it doesn't make sense to me. These people have no clue. They just want things a certain way. They want their traditions. They want whatever. I see it quite a bit, even with the conspiracies. I mean, I know what some of the histories are, and marriage has changed. Even the whole concept of marriage and how it worked has changed over the past, at least 200 years. It used to be a financial arrangement. Really, before that, it was just to keep money within families. Eventually, it kind of morphed into to allow, eventually as women began to be allowed to own property, eventually as women gained more rights, even the roles of men and women within the marriage changed. And, of course, getting to the more modern times where women have become liberated. They can do what they want. They have control over whether to have children or not. A lot of stuff has changed. And of course, love really, I think, didn't come into play maybe not until the 50s, the late 40s, early 50s. And I guess there's always been tension between the tradition versus change. So that's why I think there's such a animosity in Wisconsin or any of these places that have tried to shut down gay marriage, that there's these people who just want to hang on to tradition. Well, it really doesn't change. I don't see it changing anything. A man can still marry a woman. So a man can marry a man and a woman can marry a woman. That is, it's an expansion, but it doesn't change anything. All you're doing is expanding who can marry who. And as long as it's a consensual marriage, I think life, it shouldn't be a big problem. It's not, I love how they pull in if we allow gays to marry, then people want to marry animals and marry children and, all that stuff is just, no, you don't get it. Consensual adults. This is all, animals can't consent. Children can't consent. So you can't have a man and a boy getting married or a man and a little girl getting married. That can't happen. That is illegal. It always has been and always will be. You can't marry your animals. You can't marry a toaster. And if you think there's a problem, then you're just too stupid to live and you might as well jump into a river.
Well, that works for me.
This is an event.
This being the 4th of July, at least when this episode is released, we thought we'd do something political. But we can't just be gung-ho patriotic. America can do no wrong, like the fanatical neocons try to do at every turn. No, we thought we'd look at America's recent military and political history with a more critical eye. One that looks at the truth, not the fantasy that the far right would like us to believe. Therefore, here's our take on America's dick-waving and political parade of forced democracy around the world. So you said you had some stuff to say. You go first, because I got a whole ton.
Oh, wow. Kind of watching some of this, the latest that's coming out of Iraq, how we're sending troops back in. I don't even know how to even put it, but it just seems like, what the fuck are we doing? What the fuck is going through our heads, when we talk about
nothing?
Apparently, because, there used to be a time, maybe somewhat idealistically, that, we did believe that our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, all the stuff that we enjoy is something that the world should have access to. I'm not saying going off, it wasn't necessarily going off and fighting wars to put democracy in these countries, but we exported the idea. We exported the idea to France, about the rights, basic human rights, our Bill of Rights, were, the rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, a lot of the core, what we put together in our Constitution. Quite a few people, quite a few places picked up on this. France took it a little bit too weird. You started finding it in South America. You started finding it in Africa. It was tougher to get it in the Europeans because the Europeans were just so steeped in their traditional, governments. But even then, you would see some of those ideas appear in Germany, Italy, Portugal, I think Russia. Of course, in the conspiracy world, this is the Illuminati at work. But really, what I've been able to figure out so far is our Constitution is really an Illuminati document. These are people out of the Enlightenment where science and reason took hold. These were already ideas that were floating around Europe anyhow. We actually came up with a way of making it work. And a lot of places started adopting a lot of what they saw coming out of the United States. But it stopped. And the United States, of course, when it started becoming a world power, we started switching from these ideals to commercial. We did literally went about face, and we started, instead of going and exporting our constitution, we started exporting our commerce. And if it meant forcing Japan to accept our trade at the end of a bayonet, that was what we were doing. The Philippines, those countries in Central and South America that wouldn't bow to our corporations, we sent the Marines in to straighten them out. I kind of wonder about Vietnam, how much of that was commercially driven. I'm not 100% convinced. Iraq and Afghanistan isn't over oil, but it's there. It seems like we're more interested in that region and I think it is probably more about oil. I don't think we're there because of the oil. We're there because there is oil. If that makes any sense. We're fighting in places where, why are we there? Is it really over oppressed peoples? Are we chasing terrorists around Afghanistan? Why are we threatening Iran? Why are we threatening North Korea? I don't know. I think the only reason why we haven't invaded North Korea, because that would take off the Chinese, and we're in bigger trouble than we pick on little guys. And, if it meets our commercial agenda, that's what has to happen.
Oh, of course. And I hate having to be so negative, but America, and especially in the past 20 to 30 years, has been a real fucking bastard, especially in the Middle East. They sit around and go, oh, they hate us because of our freedom. No, they hate us because we're assholes. They hate us because we spend all of our time sticking our nose into business that isn't ours. I would really argue that a lot of things in the Middle East, and this is true of like ISIS today, they're radicalized because we left them no choice. We have basically forced them into a corner and said, you are going to do what we want you to do, whether you like it or not. And yeah, they've got only one way to fight back, and that's through terrorism. They can't compete against us militarily, economically, socially. They can't do any of that stuff. All they can do is snipe at us from the corners. I mean, I love the idea of this country, but we've strayed so far away from the original intent of this country. I'm not going to pretend we should be like towing the line to the letter of the Constitution and all that, because things do change. But Jesus fucking Christ, we've crossed lines that should never be crossed, and we act like somehow we deserve it, If you look at history, and especially since World War II, we have been involved in the overthrow of a ton of democratically installed governments and the support of dictatorships just because they do what we want them to do. We overlook this cruel and horrific treatment of indigenous peoples because we get our way. This has become the standard operating procedure after the end of World War II, when, I don't know, maybe we decided that we won the war because God was on our side or something.
I'd even go as far as going back to the Spanish-American War. I mean, I think the Spanish-American War really, it's our first real foray into world politics. We took on Spain. And how did we do it? We fought with them in Cuba. And how did that happen? William Randolph Hearst and yellow journalism. Hearst created so many lies about Cuba, what was going on in Cuba, that the United States says we got to invade. And and then how do we start the war? We sink their fleet that's on the other side of the planet in the Philippines and take over the Philippines. And that's how we start that war. The Spanish-American War was not fought in Cuba or had started in Cuba. It started on the other side of the world in the Philippines. That should say something that, I don't know if we were necessarily going after Spain. Spain was still a power, but it's a waning power. The U.S. Navy could and did deal a pretty heavy blow against it. But we were fighting basically, we never set foot in Spain. We set foot in Cuba and the Philippines. We did nothing over in Europe. And
yeah, which is pretty rare for us.
So you've seen what we've done in Cuba over since that time. We've put in dictators, and definitely in the post Second World War, and we'll put in Batista, and where we allowed Batista, and the mob had started running Cuba and the Philippines. We pretty much, after we kicked the Spanish out, then we started fighting the Filipinos to secure the island or make it safe. And actually, we turned against the guy that helped us get the Philippines in the first place. Then you had the the Banana Wars, where we invade, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. There was Panama, our recognition of Panama and its separation from Colombia. Why? Because we wanted to dig a canal across it. The Panama Canal was a very, lucrative and very profitable for the United States. Cut shipping times in half, so on. Our wars in Nicaragua was to protect U.S. fruit interests who pretty much own the country, so we can get cheap bananas and oranges and all that kind of stuff from Central America. Costa Rica. I don't know if our wars with Mexico was like that, but I imagine there was some aspect like that. We fought in, where else? Haiti.
Well, we really don't have time to go through all of the different wars.
Yeah, but it's basically we were defending commercial interests. We weren't there to bring peace to the country or bring democracy. I mean, we would support a democracy if it could fight the communists. That's what we were there for.
Oh, sure. We don't really give a shit about it, the people in any of these countries. We just don't. We never have. We go in there because it's going to make us money. And the reason why I kind of said post-World War II, I think that was pretty much when we started going batshit crazy. We started looking after the end of World War II. We were very hyper-nationalistic. We've never been really invaded on American soil, but Europe was pretty much decimated by World War II and World War I, in fact. They were suffering, and here we were, pristine, untouched, vast natural resources, and everybody was turning to us for help, which gave us a giant ego boost. And so we started running around the world waving our dick, trying to get everybody to do what we wanted them to do. And I put together a list, and these are just instances where we went in and we changed regimes. We propped up regimes, or we removed legally elected governments because we didn't like what they were doing. And I did not realize that this list was as long as this. This list is ridiculous. All right. Starting in Syria, 1949, Iran, 53, Guatemala, 54, Indonesia, 58, Lebanon, 58, Cuba, 59, Congo, 65, Iraq, 60, Dominican Republic, 61, South Vietnam, 63, Brazil, 64, Ghana, 66, Chile, 70, Argentina, 76, Afghanistan, 79, Turkey, 80, Poland, 80, Nicaragua, 81, Cambodia, 81, Angola, 81, Panama, 89. This is getting ridiculous, isn't it? Iraq, 92, Afghanistan, 2001, Venezuela, 2002, Iraq, 2002, Haiti, 2004, Gaza Strip, 2006, Somalia, 2006, Iran, 2006, we were busy in 2006, I guess, Libya, 2011, and Syria in 2012. Holy shit, that's a lot of people we fucked over for our own goddamn personal interests.
Yeah.
Our biggest enemy on this planet is us. Most other countries that hate us do it because we've been assholes.
Yeah. I'm going to say, did you mention Grenada? Is that on the list? I don't think I heard it.
I skipped it.
Oh, okay.
It's on the list, but I missed it.
Because, when I started doing, when I started looking at some of the Kennedy stuff, do you have Iran somewhere in the 50s on the list?
Let me go back and look here. Iran 53,
okay,
yeah.
Yeah. And
Project Ajax.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because when I heard about that one, when I actually looked at that, what's funny, the United States actually, we fucked with these countries, and we didn't just do it. We didn't do it militarily. A lot of these places we pumped a lot of money into it. In Iran 53, we wanted just to get a regime that was anti-communist. The Brits wanted us to get involved there because actually their main oil supply comes from Iran. And while they were trying to negotiate with the government at the time to get that oil through the various contracts they had already had, the problem was that Iran says, wait a minute, I think it's Ramco that runs, or at the time had run the oil production in Iran, which was a joint venture between Iran and Great Britain. And I think they were threatening to nationalize those oil fields because even though it was supposed to have been a 50-50 split, the British were not only getting a supply of oil, and this was the oil that was supplying their navy they were also reaping the profits. I mean, they were getting almost 80% of the profits versus 20% to Iran. Iran wanted that money, and they were threatening to nationalize. So Britain came to the United States. The United States, they bought these politicians, including a couple of I saw the name Khomeini. I don't know if it was the Ayatollah that took over. Guessing it was maybe an older or maybe a father of the Ayatollah. He took money to allow the Shah into the country. So they had a brief revolution, kicked him out. I mean, the United States, and in a lot of these places, it was pump a lot of money into the oppositions, basically buying elections, and through bribery, through buying the right newspaper reporters and media people, and paying off whatever, and literally buying elections. Sometimes it didn't work, but there was quite a few of these things, and I think only in I want to say Chile, Vietnam, I forget if there was another one where we actually did pay for an assassination.
Oh, we've done that plenty of times.
So apparently we're not even, the American people aren't even conscious of this until you hear someone like us talking about it. I mean, no one had a clue in the 50s what was going on in Cuba. All they knew is that it was a vacation spot, and, you can go in the casinos and play safe, and not realizing that, between the government and the New York mob was basically running that island. Not even realizing that, Castro had been, pretty active. He was actually a student activist. He was actually well known. He came from a wealthy family. I mean, he stood to lose a lot if the communists took over. He was, very vocal against the Batista regime, and he was very critical of, the U.S. support of Batista, which should have not made a clue to the CIA. They knew that was going on, and actually they screwed up and let Castro take over. But, the amount of money we were pumping into that country, the amount of money the mob was pumping into that country, it was just so amazing how that even worked. And then to have that all collapse, because it's a really bizarre story, and all these events are bizarre stories, bribes, sometimes there were invasions, sometimes we pay the rebels, or we pay the government, or we pay people within the government. It was either some type of commercial interest or to fight the communists. And if it meant bringing the wrong people in to fight communists, like, one of the true things about, our war on terrorism is that we built the Taliban. We built that terrorist group to fight the Russians. And while they may have at the time hated the Russians more than the Americans, once the Russians were gone, we were next.
Oh yeah. But we build all kinds of terrorist groups. Most of the major terrorist groups on the planet are our fault. Yeah. And then we run around and we fight them. And that's the stupid thing about all these dictators that we keep sticking in power, is we'll pay for them, we'll support them, we'll give them arms and everything that they need until they stop doing what we want them to do. And then we have to go in and depose them and stick somebody else in power.
Right. Yeah, we'll pay, a rebel group to take them out. And then, that happened in China. Of course, there was some other hanky-panky going on, but, our support of Shanghai Shek in China, we pumped so much money into that regime. Actually, things were happening. It's just that there was it's one of those rare. It's actually kind of, again, another weird story where the communists who had already been pretty much infiltrated into our State Department, actually killed a lot of that funding that was going to support China and Shanghai Shek, which ended up then forcing Shek to flee the country and flee to Taiwan, and Mao Zedong taking over. But it's just so much, and so much weirdness, and so much, we backed the wrong people. And, like with the fall of Cambodia and Vietnam, there were people who were scrambling. They were willing to kill themselves to get on those last planes out, or the last helicopters out of the country. We know what happened in Cambodia after the Americans left. The tens of thousands, the 100,000s were killed in that country. for the only crime of being Americanized. That was their only crime. And it's really when the Taliban kicked out the Russians from Afghanistan. What did we do to rebuild that country? Zip. So yeah, the world is going to be pissed off at us.
Yeah, well, we don't actually rebuild countries. We buy some loyalty and we demand that they do what we want them to do. The one thing that really kind of pisses me off, and I know this comes from hating the Russians and hating the communists and all the rest of that thing, but we do as much bad as they do by running around the planet and trying to install democracy everywhere. And it's a point I've made before that you cannot fundamentally install democracy in a place that doesn't want it. It is not a system of government you can force on people. You just can't. You cannot install government of, by, and for the people on people who don't want to be governed of, by, and for.
Yeah. I mean, I guess even a general statement, you can't really force a government upon anybody if they don't want it.
Oh, you can. Like communism, absolutely you can. You just go in and control what everybody's doing. As long as you control the people at the top, you control the country. That's not how democracy works.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would probably make the argument that in most cases, you still have to have a base that wants a government. I mean, they want some type of government. And you're not going to force a government that they don't want. I mean, if you try to force a communist government, you're going to get rebels, you're going to get problems. I would say that more than likely, I mean, it's probably easier to put a communist government in place than a democratic government. But even then, then, I think to force a country into a government is not going to happen. No matter what you try to put in there, it's going to be tough. I mean, it might be easier with communists because, I mean, as long as it's a dictatorship, if you try to put in a more fair communism, it might never work. I'm going to say like in Cambodia, people are going to be lined up to be executed type of thing. That's what has to happen. And that's only going to happen within a dictatorship. And that's the only way you're going to control it. I mean, even with a dictatorship, it's tough to control because there's going to be people who are going to be opposed to dictatorship. Now, whether or not you can get enough critical mass to overthrow the government, that's a different story. It's just, I don't think you can force any idea. If these people don't understand what you're trying to do, why free speech is important or separation of religion or anything out of the Bill of Rights.
Iraq is a perfect example. I said, before we ever left, I said the second we leave, the entire government that we forced to be set up is going to go away because fundamentally Islam and democracy are incompatible. Because you cannot have a democracy in a place where the religion dictates that women are second-class citizens. Right. And that's exactly what happened. Islam took over, and you started having everything Sharia law, and democracy just kind of petered out and went away.
I mean, and basically they didn't want it. I mean, they didn't want democracy or...
Yeah, they didn't want it. They wanted...
I mean, it sounded good, but, they couldn't get it, or it wasn't compatible.
Well, I mean, they didn't want democracy anyway. They just wanted American dollars to come in and build up their infrastructure that we blew the shit up because George Bush wanted to get the guy who tried to kill his daddy.
Yeah, that's probably about it. Yeah. But of course he had all those weapons of mass destruction. They had them there. They're just hiding them.
Yeah, they were just invisible. Well, come on, according to Bush and Rumsfeld, they knew exactly where they were, which they could never actually find. Yeah. Okay, yeah, whatever.
I mean, even just, with that and lying. I mean, just the lies that had to go to make that happen, I can't really think of or any of these post-Second World War. I'll stick to that. But any of these actions we took, I can't think of any of those that were maybe the early ones they were able to get through because, again, there was the nationalism, the nationalistic euphoria. We just won a world war. We just stopped Russians and the Chinese and North Korea. And, we're going to do the same in Vietnam.
Yeah, not so much.
When the war was starting, we probably thought, oh yeah, we could knock those guys back into the Stone Age, no problem. Well, we did, but, the Stone Age army kicked our ass.
Yep.
But, so I'm trying to think if there was anything, and I'm unable to. I can't figure out anything that would, where the war was right. Or I can't think of anything where it was a war where maybe the Congo, that might be, but that's that's not our doing. It was actually not the 65, but 66, 67.
Oh, we were involved in that. The CIA was
the
there.
CIA
Come on.
there, but
the CIA went in because Che Guevara showed up and they were going, holy shit, there's a communist here, there's a Marxist here, we gotta do something.
Well,
that was the whole thing behind Congo.
Well, not exactly, but in 66 and 60, I'm trying to remember. I just read about that. Mike Hoare, Congo mercenary. I think he was there I forget if he was the 65 or the 66. I mean, the CIA was floating around. I think toward the end of that is when, Guevara shows up, and then that's when, until Guevara showed up, the CIA, Congo, there's nothing there for the United States.
Well, it was purely to keep it from falling into communist hands. That was, late 65 was when they and other Western nations, pushed, God, what the hell's his name? Mobutu to take over the country, and then they changed the name to Zaire. But they only did that because he was friendly to Western interests. And he wasn't going to fall to the communists. As soon as Guevara showed up, they shit their pants. It was like, oh my God, Marxists, holy shit, run around.
Yeah.
That's how they were working back then.
Yeah, well, the one war, there was one of, I'm all screwed up here on what year was what, but there was one period where it wasn't about the communists, it was actually a civil war. It had nothing to do with,
but that was, 1960, right after the Belgium, gave freedom to the Congo.
I think so. But
because there was all kinds of breakaway camps inside the Congo where they were all fighting for control.
Right.
But that was 1960.
Okay. But all I know is that when that happened, it was a civil war, and actually, the CIA was there too at that time, but they weren't as combatants.
We were just there to stick our nose in everybody else's business.
They were more worried about, what was that one? They were more worried that this civil war would spill out of the country. And they were also worried about the fact that, the government was hiring mercenaries, and they hired Mike Hoare to head up, one of the mercenary groups. There's this, I call it hypocrisy, where here's a guy who's trying to keep his country together. And he's dealing with, I forget the group that was fighting. But these were just as bad as some of the modern day. They go into a village, they cut people's hands off. And it was really actually, they were killing off, primarily, missionaries, Western, the Christian missionaries that were working in the Congo. And basically, torturing, raping, murdering, all sorts of deprivations on these people. And the CIA was more worried about that, or at least they seemed to be more worried about this war spilling out of Congo and the image of the white mercenaries leading black soldiers fighting black soldiers. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but, the government had pretty much atrophied. The army was almost non-existent. The army they had no training or no interest in fighting, but they brought in, the Western mercenaries, the South Africans, mostly. And then they hired, locals or local African, for soldiers, and, eventually kicking out this group that was, the enemy. God, I wish I could remember what group that was. I might have to read the book again, but it was like, the CIA kind of, they were there like, they weren't really worried about, it was not important, but it was until later when, Guevara shows up and in one of the other wars, then it becomes important. The Congo was unimportant until it was threatened to be communist, and then we get interested in it. And really, that's what we got in Africa, are these countries where they are, they're torturing people, they're raping, we've done stories about albinos having their arms cut off because they're supposed to be magic. Just a lot of really nasty stuff. And, the Boko Haram, that group kidnapping girls in, Nigeria. Will we lift a finger? We barely lift a finger on that.
Well, yeah, because they've got nothing we want.
didn't we just send some troops or somebody? I don't know. We sent somebody there. I don't know if we sent State Department people, okay, to deal with it. I don't know if someone's sending an army in to look for it, but if they were threatening an oil field or they're saying we're going to start a communist regime there. Oh,
we'd have a carrier group on their front lawn.
2 carrier groups, the whole, 101st and 82nd Airborne on standby alert, somebody holding a finger over a nuke button. Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
If it's a bunch of girls that are being, tortured and who knows what's happening to them. Oh, no, that's not important.
Yeah, we just don't care. And this whole thing, I don't know what to do about this country. I mean, obviously we can't do anything by ourselves. All we can do is talk about it and hope people listen. But back in the day, people came to America because they wanted something different. But today it feels like the American dream is dead, and the liberals are only too happy to embrace the European socialist route because what America once stood for is no longer what most Americans want, or they're not willing to work for it. They want free shit. They don't want to have to fight for it. If we had the damn Revolutionary War today, nobody would show up. It's so fucking sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're in Georgia. All those people are packing.
Oh yeah, they're packing, but they would never put themselves on the line.
Hell no.
They would do it for their own personal self-interest, and for anybody else, fuck them. If they had to go out and fight for the country, they'd all run for the goddamn hills, because they're a bunch of chicken shit assholes.
Pretty much.
We have the potential to be a great nation, but we've really lost it over the years. And it's not just our foreign policy, it's our social and political and economic failures as well that have driven us down the scale. We can be a better country. We ought to be a better country. But we just can't pretend that because we want to be special, that somehow we are. I mean, we have to work at this. It takes doing things the right way and staying on task and having a goal and a plan on how to get there. And that's just not what we have in this country anymore. We're all a bunch of people with our hands out going, give me shit because I woke up this morning. This whole country is so fucked up, and we do stories every week that show just how screwed up the people are, and nobody cares. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I really don't.
How do we convince people?
I don't know how to convince anybody.
Anything worth doing is not easy, and we've gotten really lazy in this country. Let's be honest. We don't go to war if anybody can hurt us. We don't go to war with people who can actually fight back. We're the bully on the beach kicking sand in the little guy's face. That's why we know that the 9/11 hijackers came primarily from Saudi Arabia, and they were trained in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. Why didn't we go in and take over Saudi Arabia? They've got oil. Why didn't we bug Pakistan? They got nukes. We're not touching them. And it's like fucking ISIS. Every one of our goddamn Middle East allies is giving money to the biggest fucking Muslim terrorist organization on the planet. It's coming from Saudi Arabia. It's coming from Kuwait. It's coming from Syria. It's coming from Iraq. It's coming from Iran. All of these countries, the people we're going, hey, these are our allies. These are the people that we like and we pay attention to and we think are on our side. They're giving money to potentially the biggest enemy we're going to have in the coming years. Damn, we're so wonderful, aren't we? Makes me sick.
I have an idea that I think on my show I talked about it. I think I've talked a little bit here. We've treated these people bad.
We don't care about those people. They are a means to an end. We don't give shit one about any of them.
Right. But yeah,
we don't care.
I'm just saying that, I'm just saying that, we've done this. There were opportunities where we could have, after the First World War. I think this is where a lot of the, at least from the border standpoint in the Middle East, where the problems kind of start, and how we had the opportunity to create these independent states right away. There could have been a chance, if we did it right, we could send advisors to teach them how we do our democracy. We don't have to force it on them. We could just say, here's what we do. Because there was those, I believe, not really Palestine, but I think, the Transjordan, Lebanon, I think Syria, those areas, they were protectorates. They weren't full countries. We treated them like children. We just treated them bad. We didn't treat them as adults. I think there was a general feeling that these were the old Ottoman Empire states. And we felt that they weren't involved enough in government to create a government. So we were going to create protectorates and mandates to protect them. Kind of like what we did in the Philippines, where we let them create a government, but we kind of guided them along and really kind of ran the country militarily, let the government then, and 50 years, then give them their independence. These people knew how to govern themselves, but we treated them like they were idiots. And I think that adds to the animosity to us that not only were we just bullies, but we just treated them like children. We didn't let them become their own countries, and our treatment of them. And then now that they are countries in themselves, they had power because they had oil. It just seems so screwed up. And we never really looked at these countries as being adults.
We still treat them like children.
Yeah. I mean, I use that because that's probably about the best analogy. We look at them as unable to run a government. No, these are adults. These are people who've been to college. I bet you at least half of them have gone to school in the United States and got their education. They know how our government works. They probably know it better than we do. And then still we treat them like children.
Probably.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Well, we should probably wrap things up.
Sure. But it's so fun.
All right. There you go, another show in the can. Thanks for listening, and remember, you can find us everywhere, from Facebook to Google Plus to Twitter to iTunes to Stitcher Radio to Player FM. Get out there and tell people about us, and if you disagree with anything we've said, leave a comment, or better yet, come on the show. We love dissenting opinions and people who will rationally stand up for what they believe in. We'll be back next week, and until then, take care.
Later.
You've been listening to the Bitchspot Report Podcast with your hosts, Cephas and Mike. You can follow us on Twitter respectively at Bitchspot1 or at JDRipper1962. Please visit our website at report.jdragononline.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Bitchspot Report. We're also on Google+, iTunes, and YouTube. Those links are on our website. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us via email at report@jdragononline.com. Comments, ideas, and suggestions are always welcome. We'll be back next week with another fun and fact-filled episode. Please tune in again.